Welcome on board the Beneteau 37 with Conch Charters. In this video briefing, we will go through and explain how to use all of the yacht's systems and features. Below the companionway steps, on board you have a Yanmar diesel engine. Every day you are requested to perform 4 basic checks on the engine. Do your checks in the morning before you set off for the day, when the engine is not hot. To check the oil level, just like on your car at home, use the oil dipstick where the end is painted yellow to make it easy to identify. Remove and wipe the dipstick clean. Then reinsert it and check the level. The oil should be between the minimum and maximum lines. Add oil if it is only just above or below the minimum line. Please be aware that overfilling can seriously damage the engine. If you need to add oil, remove the oil refill cap and use the funnel provided. When adding oil, check the level frequently using the dipstick to avoid overfilling. It may only take a small amount of oil to top off the level. If you need to add oil on multiple occasions, please do call us. Now, to check the coolant, remove the blue cap on the top of the heat exchanger. Check to see coolant is visible. You also have an expansion bottle located here. Ensure the coolant level is between the minimum and maximum lines. To add coolant, use the funnel provided and pour coolant into the heat exchanger by removing the blue cap. If you are topping off coolant on multiple occasions, please call us. Underneath the chart table, you have both spare oil as well as spare coolant on board. To check the belt, ensure there is sufficient tension by giving it a pull and a quarter turn. Also make sure the belt is not frayed. The engine is cooled by seawater. It is important to always check there is a good flow of water out of the port side after you've turned the engine on. If you do not have sufficient flow of water, visually inspect the raw water strainer. Check no debris or seaweed is blocking the flow of water. If you suspect this is the case, please call us for further advice. There is useful information included on the tablet on board which you can refer to for troubleshooting. If you have any concerns about your engine after completing these checks, please feel free to give us a call. Before starting your engine, look around the vessel to ensure no loose lines are in the water. Also check the throttle lever is in the upright neutral position. To start the engine, first turn on the engine panel by lightly pressing the top right button. Once switched on, you will see the panel illuminate, the alarm will sound, and the engine hours will become visible. Now hold down the same button on the engine control panel until you hear the engine fire up and you see the RPM rise. The switch on the top left is to activate the glow plugs, which are used to preheat the engine. You will not need to activate the glow plugs in the warm waters of the Caribbean. If you are unable to start your engine via the engine control panel, a secondary start has been fitted to your engine. As normal, first move the key to the on position to turn on the engine panel. Then move into the engine bay to press the second start button, which on your vessel is located here, accessible via the aft cabin. Press and hold down the button until the engine fires up. There are 3 warning lights on the engine control panel to be aware of. If a sensor detects an issue, the indicator on the panel will light and an alarm will sound. Under normal operation, these lights should be off. This is the coolant high temperature indicator. Operating at high temperatures exceeding the limit will result in damage and potential engine seizure. If you see this alarm, shut down the engine if it is safe to do so. This is the engine low oil pressure indicator. which will activate if the engine oil pressure falls below normal. Shut down the engine to avoid any potential damage if you see this warning. This is the battery low charge indicator, which will come on when batteries are not receiving charge from the alternator. Check the RPM on your engine and then also check your drive belt. Please do not ignore any warning and always feel free to give us a call. If you are running your engines to charge your batteries, put the lever in the neutral position and then push in the red button to disengage the shifting mechanism. This prevents the propeller from being driven forward or in reverse. With the red button pushed in, move the lever forward until the RPM reaches 1500. This is the optimum RPM for charging your batteries from the engine. Now your engine is running, moving the throttle lever forward or backward will allow you to accelerate forward or go astern. When shifting, pause in the upright neutral position for a moment, as shifting too quickly can cause the engine to stall or damage the transmission. To stop your engine, move the throttle lever into the neutral upright position. Push and hold the stop button until you hear the engine completely stop and the control panel alarm sound. You can turn off the engine panel by pressing the bottom right button. Please ensure the panel is turned off when not using the engine, otherwise this will drain your start battery. This is the introduction to your electrical systems on the vessel. Your panel is divided into two sections. On the far left are the 110 volt breakers, and on the right side are the DC 12 volt switches. The appliances on the 110 volt circuit are operational when connected to shore power. The appliances on the 12 volt circuit are powered from your house batteries. Below the LCD screen are three buttons. The left one is your voltage selector. Press once to toggle through the battery bank options, where board represents your house batteries and motor represents your engine start battery. The second button is for water and the right button is for fuel. If you leave the display alone for several moments, it will eventually default back to the house voltage. In the center of the panel, you will see an LCD screen with a voltage readout. Your LCD screen is defaulted to read out the house battery voltage, which is indicated as main. A healthy voltage is between 12.3 and 12.7 volts when you're not charging your batteries. When charging from the battery charger or running your engines, check to confirm the voltage gauge increases above 13 volts. Never allow the voltage for the battery bank to drop below 12 volts, as this will cause serious damage to your batteries. Starting at the top of the left-hand column are all the breakers related to lighting. You are a designated day boat, so although the navigation lights are functional, they should not be required. The anchor light is the captain's choice when on a mooring ball. Below the LCD display is a single breaker for all internal lights in the vessel. Please note there are also individual light switches throughout the vessel as well, which look like this. At the bottom right of the panel is the switch for the bilge pump. This is a dual function switch. And to the left is manual. To the right is automatic. The manual setting will override the bilge pump's float switch. In the off position, the bilge pump will never activate. Switching on the freshwater pump switch will pressurize the freshwater system on board. When not using freshwater, put the switch in the off position. If your water pump is running constantly, it may be because the water tank has become empty. To swap over from one tank to another, you can find the swap over valves located behind this saloon seat. Only have one valve open at a time, and there is one valve per tank. This is the valve's open position, and this is the valve's closed position. If your water tanks are not empty but the water pump is still running, this may be caused by an open faucet. The most common culprit is the stern shower located here. Your boat has a fridge unit in the galley area. Refrigeration can be activated from one power switch located on the 12-volt panel. The fridge also has a thermostat, which is preset. Your fridge will draw more power from the house batteries than any other appliance on board. Continuous running will require you to keep an eye on your house battery bank voltage. Some additional charging from the engine may be required even though you are receiving a trickle charge from the solar panels mounted on your bimini. We recommend turning off refrigeration before going to bed if not connected to shore power in order to conserve battery charge. The solenoid for propane going to oven and stovetop can be controlled by the switch labelled LP gas. When activated, the solenoid will open, allowing the flow of propane from the aluminium tank in the cockpit, supplying gas to the stove. When finished cooking, remember to turn the switch off. You can also isolate and close the tank in the cockpit by turning this valve to further prevent the possibility of a gas leak. After the valve on the top of the tank is open and the gas valve switches are in the on position, light the stove by striking a match and hold the lit match over the stovetop. Then press in the knob and move it to the left. Hold the knob in for several moments after the propane ignites. Wait until the thermocouple heats up. After this, the valve will remain open and you can release the knob and adjust accordingly. To light the oven, like before, strike a match, hold the lit match to the bottom propane outlet. Move the corresponding knob to the left. Again, hold the knob in for several moments after the propane ignites. Wait until the thermocouple heats up. After this, the valve will remain open and you can release the knob and adjust accordingly. To light the grill, carry out the same process but hold the match to the top propane outlet and move the knob to the right. Remember to hold it in like before until the thermocouple heats up. Towards the bottom right of the panel is the breaker for the navigation instruments at the helm. The battery isolators for the 12-volt circuit are located under the berth in the port aft cabin. If you find you do not have power from one of your batteries, check the isolator switches are in the correct position, as these sometimes can be unintentionally moved by those staying in the port aft cabin. You would only need to isolate your batteries if there is a fire on board. Now we are going to discuss the 110-volt breakers. The appliances on the 110-volt circuit are functional whilst connected to shore power. If you visit a marina with shore power available, once connected, move the AC main shore breaker to the right to switch on. Once shore power is connected and switched on, always activate the battery charger. This will charge your house batteries and engine start battery. Once turned on, you'll be able to run the appliances on your 12-volt circuit, such as your fridge, without draining your batteries. At the bottom of the 110-volt panel, there is a breaker labelled outlets. With this breaker in the on position, the outlets around the vessel will become live. These outlets are only functional while shore power is activated. If you wish to charge your mobile devices without shore power, we have put a 500-watt inverter on board, which is powered from your house batteries via the 12-volt socket. Please note the 500-watt limit on this inverter. For example, this will not be able to power a hairdryer. If overloaded, the fuse will blow and the inverter will stop working. The only item that you will not require whilst on charter is the water heater. The breaker should remain in the off position, even whilst on the dock. It is a heavy load item and you will receive plenty of hot water from your engine after just 15 minutes of running time. Each morning, when you do your engine checks, please also inspect your bilges to ensure water is not accumulating. As mentioned earlier, you have a bilge pump and a float switch on board, which is located here. In the event your bilge pump float switch override does not energize the pump via the 12-volt panel, you have a backup manual bilge pump. Move the handle in the following motion to drain water from the bilge. You have saltwater flushing heads on board. Never put toilet paper, cigarettes, paper towels, hygiene products, or anything else down the head that you have not digested first, as this will result in blockages. Please avoid blocking your head, as this will incur a fee to resolve the issue. Before using the head, check the holding tank valve. The valve for the holding tank is located below the sink. Opening the valve for the seacock will empty the holding tank from your toilet on board. Leave this valve closed if you're in a marina, bay, or if you have crew members swimming around the boat. You can discharge your holding tank once you are 3 nautical miles from the coast or you are in the centre of the Sir Francis Drake Channel. Discharge your holding tanks as frequently as possible to avoid build-up and to minimise odour. Opening the valve for the seacock will empty the holding tank overboard. Leave this valve closed if you are in a marina, a bay, or if you have crew members swimming around the boat. You can discharge your holding tank once you are 3 nautical miles from the coast or in the centre of the Sir Francis Drake Channel. Discharge your holding tanks as frequently as possible to avoid build-up and to minimise odour. To open the holding tank valve, move the handle so it is in line with the hose. To close the valve, move the handle so it is at a 90-degree angle to the hose. To operate the toilet, first flip the switch to the wet position and use the hand pump to make sure the bowl has water in it. After use, move the flip switch to dry and pump until the contents of the bowl are low enough for comfort. Flip the switch back to wet and pump for around 15 to 20 strokes. This is to clear the long discharge line between the toilet bowl and the holding tank, which will prevent clogging and also alleviate odour. Doing this will keep your boat smelling as fresh as possible. Ultimately, your holding tank is very good at retaining odour, whereas the hoses from the toilet bowl are not as effective. After flushing, flip the switch back to dry and pump until the bowl is dry. Always leave the bowl empty and on the dry position, particularly when underway, to minimise odour and spillage. When finished, leave the hand pump in the locked position to prevent backfilling. You will be able to operate the shower drain pump using the button located here in the forward head. On board, there is a variety of safety equipment you should familiarise yourself with before departing. In the event of an emergency, you can attract attention with flares and an air horn, which are located here. There is also a first aid kit on board, which you will find here. Life jackets can be found in the following location. There are also fire extinguishers on board, which are located here, here, and here. In the event that you lose steering on the vessel via the helm, you have a backup emergency tiller. The emergency tiller is located here inside the cockpit locker. To use the emergency tiller, take a winch handle, remove the emergency tiller access, and insert the tiller inside. You will then be able to move the tiller in order to steer the vessel in place of the helm. At the helm are the boat's navigation instruments. Here is the depth gauge. This shows the current depth of water you are currently in, not just the clearance below the keel. Your boat's draft is 6 foot 4 inches. To operate the sails, all the lines you need lead back to the cockpit. Please ensure you never open the spin lock for the genoa halyard, located here. You have a roller furling genoa. Operating the genoa sheet and roller furling line will allow you to unfurl and furl the sail. Release the roller furling line located here and bring in the genoa sheet to unfurl the sail, and do the reverse to refurl the sail. When furling the sail, maintain tension on the roller furling line. In moderate wind speeds, we recommend furling the head sail downwind instead of upwind. When raising the mainsail via the main halyard, having a crew member at the mast jumping the line will speed up the operation. It is much easier to put in a reef before raising the sail. Your mainsail has a slab reefing system. There are 2 reefing lines. Each day, we recommend you check the weather forecast to calculate the correct amount of sail to put out. On board, you have a fuel tank which holds 37 gallons of diesel. Your boat has already been fully fueled before your charter. We strongly recommend recording a log of your engine hours to track your fuel consumption. Once you have completed 35 engine hours, look to refuel. On board, you have 2 water tanks holding 90 gallons of water in total. Locations where you can refill your water tanks are discussed during your chart brief. You can fill your water tanks by removing the water fill caps painted blue, which are located here. Make sure you top off your water tanks before leaving Conch Charters using the hoses on our docks. Before operating the windlass, ensure the engine is turned on. The windlass is a high load item. You may also need to increase the engine's RPM in neutral with the shifting mechanism disengaged, as we discussed earlier in Chapter 1. To operate the windlass, use the remote control in the anchor locker. There are 2 buttons for moving the chain up and down. The anchor is predominantly attached to chain, which is made off to a secured bitter end. When dropping your anchor, please check your depth and your surroundings and adhere to the 5:1 chain to depth ratio. You can judge the length of chain put out by looking at how many boat lengths you have drifted away from where you dropped the anchor. You should be just over 1 1/3 boat lengths away. Once you see your anchor is holding, you can attach the snubbing line, which is located inside the anchor locker. Put the hook through the anchor chain and tie the line off to your bow cleat. Once attached, release the chain somewhat so that the snubbing line takes the tension away from the windlass. The snubbing line is better at absorbing shocks from changing winds and waves, which protects your windlass. If the windlass is not functioning, one of the first things to check is the circuit breaker. It is located in the aft cabin, among the battery isolators. Move the breaker down and up again to reset it. Before you depart Conch Charters docks, you are required to complete an inventory sheet confirming the equipment on board. You will find many of the outdoor items on this sheet, such as deck brush, bucket, cockpit cushions, etc., in this cockpit locker. If you have any questions about your boat, please feel free to get in touch and we'll be more than happy to help. We hope you have an excellent charter and a fantastic vacation. Thank you very much for choosing to sail with Conch Charters.